The plenary Transforming India Through New Age Philanthropy focuses on bringing to the fore the candid perspectives of New Age philanthropists and their take on transforming the lives of the underserved. The discussion will explore the novel ways in which philanthropy is addressing social challenges and reshaping the landscape of social impact. The moderator for the session is Mr. Amit Chandra. Mr. Chandra co-founded the ATE Chandra Foundation with his wife Archana. ATE Chandra Foundation works closely with non-profits and governments to design and scale solutions that impact the most marginalized populations. Amit is the chairperson and founder of Bain Capital's India office. I would now introduce you to all our 5 panelists. We start with Anisha Ramakrishnan. Ms. Anisha spearheads corporate social responsibility of Transworld Group and is the CEO of Vami Capital, Transworld's family office. Anisha brings strategic foresight to managing wealth and ensuring its continuity. Ms. Anupama Dalmia is the founder of Sikho Sikhao Foundation, a non-profit organization deeply committed to improving rural government school education in India. Her zeal lies in mobilizing, empowering, and streamlining existing structures of learning and governance to bring about a paradigm shift in the public education system. Ms. Radhika Bharatram is the joint vice chairperson at the Sri Ram Schools in Delhi NCR, which ranks amongst India's prominent educational institutions. Radhika founded the Karm Fellowship, which works with driven young women from underserved homes in the areas of higher education. Her vision is to influence gender parity in workspaces over continued periods of time. Ms. Tara Singh Vachani is the executive chairperson of Antara Senior Living and vice chairperson of Max India Limited. As founder of Antara, her vision was to give a new dimension to the senior care space in India. Today, Antara encompasses 5 verticals: residences for seniors, care homes, care at home, Medcare products, and Age Easy by Antara. She is a member of the Young Global Leaders 2020, a part of the World Economic Forum. And our last panelist for the evening is Mr. Nishant Arya. He's the Vice Chairman and MD of the Global Indian Conglomerate JBM Group and Chairman of Lindweimen GmbH, Germany. Nishant represents the face of today's young and dynamic business leaders. With his innovative ideas and dynamic leadership traits, he has transformed JBM Group into a well-diversified conglomerate with a global footprint. Welcome all panelists and our moderator, and over to you, Mr. Amit Chandra.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to ISDM for organizing such a fabulous event. I understand there were over 700 people. Thank you so much. Over 700 people who gathered here today, making this probably the most well-attended social sector event in the country. We've have a star-studded panel here to follow what was another star-studded panel discussion just before us. And this is the last session, I understand. So we're going to try to make this zippy, interactive as well, leave enough time for all of you to ask them questions. And, we have the lone male representative here to make sure we have the diversity quota filled in. So we want to make sure he's put on the spot as well. But let me start with Radhika ji. We've had a lot of sessions, a lot of discussions today where the focus has basically been on trying to understand what exists, what the art of the possible is. I want to actually make this session a little bit about how things are changing and where the future might go. About learnings, about failures, about, as the topic suggests, transformation. And so I want you all to be as open as possible so that the audience can actually take away a few things from each of your journeys. And I'm going to start with you. As you see your own philanthropy, whether it be the CSR initiatives of your group or the philanthropy of your family, evolve over the last decade, what are the major shifts that you have seen happen And I'd love for the audience to learn about what really prompted those shifts.
Okay, namaste everyone. The family has its CSR wing, the company has, and the family's taken a decision that we will play a role of advisory and not be involved in day to day. The Shriram Schools is something that I'm actively involved in, but my journey actually started out as a social worker. And the combination of working for people and education is what led to Karm. Karm comes from a realization for people like me that how are you going to use your privilege to make the society better? And for me, women causes are very, very dear. While there is a lot of work happening, I feel there is lack of support, lack of mentoring, lack of access and opportunity for women. How I look at the landscape is that now it's for me and my husband to take forward our legacy and build something on education, create more institutions that would support women. Landscape is changing where I feel the next gen feels very differently about philanthropy. They want to be involved in it. They want to deep dive into it. They're happy to make mistakes, learn from them. And I think my biggest learning has been that when you are so very involved in the project that you're working for, you realize the solutions have to come from the people you're working for. You can't sit in a nice air-conditioned conference room and make decisions for people that you're working for. And I think that has been such a transformation for me personally, and even for how philanthropy or giving has been in our country. Big houses have made decisions, put money, but I don't think the involvement has been that much, right? So the way I look at it is that for me, it's personally very, very important that I need to know each and every girl at Karma. I need to know all their stories. It's a very high touch program, so it needs to have all of us, the entire team, deep diving into what will make this girl succeed. So for us, and the way I look at philanthropy personally, it is all about the depth, and the width is not that important to me. So the numbers are not going to be huge, but I know the impact for each and every girl is going to be phenomenal, and they will succeed. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Radhika. I'm going to change gears a little bit and move to Tara. Tara, we were talking about your journey over the last 10, 15 years just before this. And I'd love for you to share with the audience. There have been clearly some inflection points and lots of changes. Share with the audience what prompted those changes and how the evolution in your own approach to philanthropy has been.
And namaste, everybody. I think for me, being an entrepreneur and seeing businesses get built have influenced how one would like to be in the space of giving, even in the social sector, because I think systems, processes, people, talent, vision, mission, all actually are parallel. And we don't spend enough time on the capacity building in the social sector to then see the multiplier effect. So our family foundation, because we were in the healthcare space for many years, operated projects on the ground related to healthcare. And in 2019, when we exited the healthcare business, it gave me actually the privilege of stepping back and saying, what could we do better with our CSR and our philanthropy? Because we combined the two and used our foundation as a vehicle for everything that we did in the social sector space. And at that time, actually, the only way I knew how to sort of pull back was to study. And I spent 1.5 years using every relationship resource tool that I had to understand the needs of the developmental sector. And when I started layering, like I said, my learnings of being an entrepreneur, my discovery process led me to where I am today, which is to say, I think we would be more efficient in giving grants and giving our time. So the foundation actually completely pivoted from running its own projects and being a 30-member foundation to a 1.5-member foundation. I'm the half, actually probably 1.75 member, I'm the 0.25. And we actually have a selection criteria where we choose organizations for whom their life mission is to make impact on the ground. And because of my personal passion in the space of education and literacy and numeracy, we've started to fund organizations that focus on that particular space, because I do believe narrowing down where you give and how you give and creating that focus is very important for someone like me. I believe building those relationships, studying that sector, building the ecosystem in a particular space is very important. And we did not want to spread ourselves thin between multiple causes, even though the needs are humongous in each area that we sort of touched. So my personal passion and my family gave me the right to choose, and I am, the managing trustee of the foundation. And so my profile today didn't talk about that at all. It talked about something completely different. But that's what the foundation does. We select, we partner through funding as well as personal time. So I sit on boards, I chair boards. I love connecting dots. So every time somebody says, I'm thinking of this or I need this, I feel very successful if I've been able to do some matchmaking there. And I really do also believe it, therefore, in the power of boards and the role that boards play for all institutions and organizations. And I'm finding more and more my time is going in supporting and nurturing organizations, setting up and managing boards for their entities.
Thank you, Tara. I'm going to shift gears and move to Anupama. But before that, I'm going to just acknowledge something. When I started working in the social sector, which was about 20 years ago, at that time I was, already running a reasonably successful company, and I thought I would use everything I knew to, do things in the social sector. I thought I knew a lot, and then I realized I knew nothing. And one of the things, Radhika, as you were talking about, your approach to philanthropy, I realized that, over the years, that there is no necessarily one way to solve a problem. You could have very different approaches to get to the same end outcome. And so as we move to, Anupama, it struck me talking to Anupama that her approach to solving, the issue of education is actually to go wide as opposed to go deep and partner with the government. And Anupama, I'd love to hear from you and for the audience to understand, has there been an approach that you had from the beginning, or is that an approach that you evolved to? And, how did that evolution really happen?
So for me, it's been a journey. I started, my journey started by visiting a few government schools around UP, because that's where our manufacturing units are. So when I visited the schools, I was driven by a passion. When I spoke to the parents, the children over there, I realized there was so much of a gap in education, even though there were so many resources that the governments were doling out. And somewhere, something clicked in me that I could use my management skills to actually better the conditions there. So what started with giving inputs in government schools, that means I started having extracurricular capsules, remedial work in government schools, then realizing that giving wasn't enough, because then I could not scale it up. I could not touch the many lives that needed to be touched, because there were like 10 lakh schools, to a school every 2 kilometers in the rural areas. That developed into a need to kind of partner with the government, because there were already existing structures which could be mobilized to do the work that I could not do alone. So this has led me to actually partner with the government, move teacher training in a way that it's not a delivery system, rather it is facilitating and mobilizing teachers to impart knowledge in a way where they own it, rather than just do a grade level teaching, whether it's applicable or not. Also to partner with the community and mobilize gram panchayats and then the school management committees, realizing that accountability can only come through the parents. So if the parents are involved in the school, then there is an accountability. In my work, I discovered that 80% of the schools in the areas we work have great infrastructure without us needing to give any donations to them, because there were enough government resources which were not getting mobilized. So, with this approach of leveraging things which were already on the ground and making powerful collaborations with other organizations working in the same areas, we have been able to make much more impact than we could have if we had been just working alone and giving out doles, giving money for infrastructure, giving our own model of teacher training. That would not have happened. Here we are working with an empowerment model. We are making people who should be doing the work take ownership and do the work. And it's been a fantastic journey. I'm still learning, growing. I'm primarily no background in education, but I think I have common sense and managerial skills, which are more important than any education I can get. So excited about the journey, really, truly. Thank you.
Thank you. Nishant, I'm going to move to you now. And I have a similar question for both you and Anisha. You all have, you're a little bit younger to the rest of the group. And so you've seen, maybe the first half of the movie. And that part of the movie still involves the intersection of CSR and philanthropy. And at some point of time, those things then start to diverge a little bit. And, you then see, families getting more interested in philanthropy as opposed to CSR, and companies start doing their own CSR and families start doing their own philanthropy. So I'd love to hear from both of you, and maybe starting off with you, that how has it been, aligning the family's philanthropy agenda with the CSR agenda? And are you at that stage where you're beginning to think of the two things differently? So can you start talking about that? Yeah.
Sure. So namaste and good evening, everybody. Happy to be here, and thanks ISDM for inviting me here. I think it's been a very interesting journey. So as a family, we have been donating, engaging with different stakeholders where we saw that there was a need. But what we saw that about 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, that we are not very structured in our approach, and we are not really seeing that we are focusing on certain areas. So we focused and took up areas where we thought we could have the highest social impact. And that's when we took up skill development, education, and health as the focus areas for our foundation. And there, what we tried to do is that whatever work which we were doing on the health side of it was more in terms of philanthropy, supporting people, getting operated, or other kind of issues which they were facing. And whatever which we were doing on skill development was being driven more by CSR. And philanthropy was being driven more by individual perspective and inputs and associations. And skill development was being done in a structured manner through CSR, because I totally agree that competence and capacity building is very important for really scaling things up. And without scaling them up, they can't become sustainable, and the social impact also becomes negligible. So that's when we saw that for well-being and quality of life, it's very important that employability becomes a focus. And 100% employability was our target. And that's how we started setting up skill development centers on a pan-India basis. And those skill development centers really got great traction. And people were able to really understand that how their skilling is being done in a manner which is being done by people who run industries, who really have businesses, who understand the need, what the industries have, and they could have a livelihood where they could have a meaningful purpose for themselves and their own families, giving them the confidence to do things. And that scaled up very well across India. We started with the northern region. And then we saw that, so we have facilities in different parts of the world, that how we could take it global. And skill development was one thing which actually was very relevant in each and every part of the world, even though the societies are very evolved and are growing, but they are having different challenges than what we do. But we were clearly able to see that every institution, every organization, every government, every province was really getting attracted towards that. And we could understand clearly that the people, local people, were very keen. So because we run another initiative which we call Vichar, which is that as kids, most of us going to school used to have a moral science period. So we started focusing that how a thought, which we call vichar, could really impact them, and we could talk about the Vedic values and other things which our families have earned over generations, but are slowly getting lost because people don't understand and know about them, and they're not talked about as well. And more than 50,000 students in different schools in different parts of India, we replaced the moral science period with vichar. So one is the social fabric, one is the employability, which is livelihood and well-being, and one was focused on health, which is imperative in life as people face difficulties, how we could support them when they need us the most. So that is how we were deciphering each of these segments and addressing them. And I personally got involved with this in the last 10 years, where I initially focused more on skill development, and later on with Vichar and other initiatives, that how we could spread it and see that how, as a social fabric getting developed, we are able to inculcate the Vedic values and other things, and they become a part of daily lives of people when they are addressing and using these things as they grow up.
Excellent. Anisha?
Firstly, thank you for the question and very happy to be here. Very grateful to be here. It's been a great round of panels since morning. So thank you for that. So in terms of my family's journey and our journey, I think I'm sure similar to the rest of the panelists here. I think it's a great sense of learning, right? So I think you live and you learn and you change and you keep growing. So I think when it comes to us, my grandfather who started the company was known for sort of giving, even in whatever realm or whatever capacity that he had. So it's almost ingrained in us as part of our family culture. But I think when it came to my father's generation, it was more, again, an idea of giving. And then once I came in, it was a more structured framework of the way we look at it. So for example, I added a few metrics. So when we look at our CSR projects, we have an MIS, we keep we try to make sure that we have an impact so that we can grow and measure the impact. So it is a very structured way of doing it. So I think when we talk about CSR and philanthropy, again, that's a evolving process as well, right? So I think we worked in CSR to get to a certain space and a stage where we have a sustainability report, attached to ESG and the way we're doing that. But I think now when we look at philanthropy, it's the next sort of phase in our family's direction where we wanted to be separate from CSR. So CSR has its targets with the UN SDGs, with what's happening in India, as well as what we do with the company. So it relates. I think there was a panel that happened earlier today that was discussing the projects that they take on, right? So more often than not, companies take on projects closer to their sites. So that's what we do as CSR, to give back to the people in that aspect. But I think philanthropy will be different in a way where we're not measuring and going with that sort of governance, but we're going more with the heart in a sense. So we're doing what's close to our family values and close to our family heart. But our philanthropy journey is just starting. We're just evolving and working on the constitution and creating the formalities. But I think that's the differentiating factor for us.
Thank you, Anisha. I actually want to build on your answer. And, so sometimes when I look at where things stand at this point of time, and I, wonder whether the glass is half empty or half full. And it does seem in many areas, rapid progress has been made. A lot of people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. In some areas, it does seem we've made good progress. But in a lot of areas, I think it seems that the problems are overtaking us, right? I mean, climate change. In education, it seems that, if you look at literacy levels, Tara and Radhika and Anupama can all talk about this. It does seem that, we haven't made the progress that we wished. Health, we have made good progress. So, I mean, the scorecard would read like a bunch of, red, greens, and yellows. So, as each one of you looks at the next, decade ahead, Anisha talked about a lot of tools which today philanthropists are sitting and, are thinking about using, which few used to think about using, 10 years ago. Whether it's a lot more investment in measurement and evaluation, use of a lot more technology platforms, thinking about theory of change, and working with consultants occasionally to kind of do that, thinking about governance mechanism and investments in processes, partnerships with with governments. I mean, Anupama ji is a good example of someone who's working on that. So there are tools today that and levers that one can pull which are different than what they were, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I'd love to hear from each of you, and maybe there are things I've not covered. AI could be one, I mean, who knows? But as you crystal ball gaze, and this may not be things which are in your arsenal at this point of time, but as you crystal ball gaze and you think about the problems that you are passionate about, gender issues, livelihood, education, what do you think are some of the tools of the future, things that hold promise that could potentially result in step changes in the problems that you're really passionate about? So, Tara, can we start with you? Yeah.
I think for me, it's and people keep talking capacity building, and I really do think there is merit in that. The quality of leaders in the social sector do not match the quality of leaders in the for-profit sectors, and therefore funders have to wake up and start investing in leaders and capacity. And I think that this is going to be something we have to continue to promote and push for 100 years ahead. Even if robots start ruling the world, I still think we have to build a cadre of leaders. Of course, this list that I could, crystal ball can be 5 points, but that's really something I feel very passionately about. And therefore, to build those leaders, the attention, the time, the resourcing it takes is extremely important. And we have to have a mindset shift. The fact of the matter is we are always complaining about CSR, and understandably so, as organizations who are accepting CSR funds, they're constantly getting pushed as to where is that last rupee impacting on the ground. But if policymakers could start to make CSR, as an example, easier to say, you know what, you can use it towards capacity building, we would unleash pay parity in the social sector. And everybody, because I think as a race in India, we all believe in bigger good. Somehow that is ingrained in us as a society. So many people would want to be in the sector, but you're always worried about what you're going to get paid. So if there was one magic wand I had, I'd say I'd try and get as many people to put money behind hiring solid leaders and paying them really, really well.
Excellent. I'm surprised there weren't claps in from the audience. Tara, actually, one of the two verticals in our foundation is capacity building. We started investing in capacity building 15 or 18 years ago. No credit to me. It was my wife's idea. And I think in learning and development, we've supported 12 programs. 4,600 leaders have been trained in these 12 programs over the last 15 years that we have. I think that's still only, I would say, the first innings of a 4 innings test match. So we are complete converts to the point that you made. Would love to hear other perspectives. We've heard capacity building is one. Radhika? Yeah, it's on. I think that mic is, maybe you want to use the one.
So when I started my journey with Karma, I was like, oh my God, impact, how am I going to measure this? And a friend of mine who's sitting in the audience told me about theory of change and helped me come up with theory of change. And we're work in progress, right? We're learning. I haven't studied, haven't studied social sector. This is very, very new. When you're a social worker, it's very different. And when you're creating something, it's very different. And of course, then we came up with our M&E program and everything. But what we do at Karm, which I feel is very important, is that we're constantly listening to our girls, getting feedback from them with any intervention that we do. We get feedback from them. that is deconstructed, and we need to understand whether what we delivered worked or didn't work, right? At the end of the day, it has to work for the people that you're trying to support. Even with our mentoring program, we have an army of mentors that support our girls. And after every meeting, our mentors have to fill a form about how the conversation went. And again, it is deconstructed, and we sit as a team to understand, did it work? Where are the girls? Are they moving forward? What is holding them back? So if there is a theme that's emerging in a particular form, then we need to address it as Karm. And everybody knows that there are a lot of emotional issues that our girls go through. So while that was not part of the program, we had to get involved in that and supporting our girls emotionally as well. Initially, when we started off, Amit, we had very big plans. We said, we're going to do skills and, creativity and critical thinking. And when we met our girls and we started executing, I said, this is all rubbish. This is not going to work. It has to be experiential. They have to be out there. They have to do internship. They have to get a feel of what it feels like to work. And it's only then when they earn their own money, the financial independence and when I think for anybody, when you have your own money, I think the empowerment starts coming in. So it's a very important part of what we do, is to make sure our girls are financially independent from very start. So yeah, we're learning. I hope we'll be able to measure, and 10 years from now, who knows?
Thank you. That's a wonderful point. I would summarize that as community centricity, but I would probably add, because it's been a big learning for me as well, working in the sector, that where that's not just community centricity but also community participation. And we, for example, try to take it one step further, where, because we are a grant making organization and we work extensively with organizations that are on the field, we don't call them as NGOs but as partners, because the moment you basically start calling them as NGOs and make them agents of your change, you basically lose that the power equation that kicks into that relationship. And so having both community centricity and partner centricity actually I think is very, very important. Anisha, you wanna add to that, and then we can move to the other two as well.
Yeah, so I think it's funny you asked that. So I think if you ask me, like, look at the crystal ball and tell me what the next 5 things would be, if you ask me that in finance, I could tell you off the top of my tongue. But I feel
you can talk about finance as well.
No, but my point is, when you talk about the social sector, I think there's still a lot of foundational stuff that hasn't, that the needle hasn't moved yet, right? So I feel like, I remember when I was studying in the social sector, we had the Millennium Development Goals, right? And now it's turned into the SDGs. So I feel like that needle hasn't moved to the point where we can say, okay, now this is, we're going to bring in blockchain into, I don't know. But I feel like, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but I think we are doing a lot, but I feel like there is still more to go, where after a certain point where the foundation is concrete, then we can say, okay, these are pivots that we can make and move to.
So Anisha, I'm going to actually push on that.
Okay.
You have the benefit of probably having the cleanest slate. Yeah. Okay. And if you were to inject fresh ideas into the sector, what are some of the ideas you think that can actually stick?
So I think something that we're looking at now actually is we're looking again at the UN SDGs, and we're looking geography, where is the lowest, like where the reds and the oranges, and which sector the reds and oranges. And a lot of it happened to be in, not in Mumbai, not in Delhi. So it'll be in the Northeast, or it'll be in these certain sectors where it's very difficult to get to. So I think that is the fine line between CSR and philanthropy, where philanthropy, we're capable and able to do that, and we're very happy to do it.
So look for underserved spaces. I know Joe out there would love that response, because she works in a highly underserved, and I'm sure there are lots of people who work in underserved geographies and underserved verticals. So look at that. And I'm going to push a little bit more into that in terms of tools, because you come from the world of finance, you come from the corporate world. there are lots of new tools available. We've seen the tools available for people like you and me have just completely exploded. And Nishant, I want you to think about this as well because Spotlight abhi next aap pe aane wala hai. Uh, in terms of the new tools that are available for folks like you and me, which are the tools you think are easiest for the sector to absorb?
Yeah.
AI, something else? I mean, what do you think it can pick up and run with?
Yeah, I mean, again, so I love tools, I love jargons. I think the finance world, that's the most fun thing. No one knows what you're talking about, but then, something comes out. But I think in this world, right, in this side, I feel like a lot of the partners that we work with, I think basic things like their accounts or basic things like their marketing or, whether it's going on social media or whether it's providing the MIS or even using Excel for that matter. I think those are a few things that they're lacking that we work very, very hard with them to figure out how to do it and how to give the data and how to share the data. So I think it just
So,
goes
so
back
do you
to the
think the
first.
time has come to put these on platforms where it actually becomes much easier for the sector to use them?
I think so, definitely. I think the awareness, putting it in something very simple and user-friendly will make a world of a difference. I think it's a great idea, actually, Amit. Thank you.
No, it came from you. Nishant, what are your thoughts on this?
So actually, a couple of years back, we started with this area of awareness where we focused on sanitation in a very big way, and we work with about 2.5 million households in different parts of Haryana and other states in northern India, where sanitation was a huge issue, and people are not able to understand how disposal of waste, how kids and parents and the whole families used to operate in a certain way, which we all know, and where we engage with them and we use different kinds of AI solutions to understand what is the behavioral pattern which they have. And basis that, what we try to see is that how the behavioral pattern is changing. And we started with the kids at school and the kids cajoling their parents that they should act differently, and how that pattern has completely changed where they're segregating waste at home, they're not disposing it, they're not throwing it on the roadsides and other things, and that has become a way of life for them in many areas. Even though I would not say we have achieved 100% success yet, but we are 50-60%, which is still a huge accomplishment, but we have a long way to go. On the other hand, what we were able to see was that in since we do mobility solutions, electric mobility solutions in other areas, so there was a stereotype that there can be only men who are driving vehicles, there can be only men who are conductors and other things. And we introduced the first women driver in the country for electric buses and started training them. And there we've actually brought in a perspective which I personally learned about 10 years back in Israel: fail fast, fail cheap. So, and fail fast, fail cheap was a great thing to learn. I think it was a game changer for me personally as well. And where 70% plus funding happens and opportunities are given to people who have failed in the past. And that's how they see that success rate in those people is 90% plus, because the eagerness to succeed and the ability to prove themselves and know what to do and what not to do is the highest. Whereas in countries like India and many other countries, that's a taboo, that people who have failed in the past are untouchables literally, and you should not really work with them. And that changed our perspective, and we really saw that the kind of output, the commitment which those women had and many other people had who had failed in the past really changed completely. And that's where we started using one technology from Israel only: how you understand the human psyche, how the people started thinking differently when they were appreciated, when they got feedback, when they got inputs, when they got professional training, and they got things. And there was huge improvement in the way they were operating and doing things. So that's how we are using technology in different areas, but it's all recent, I would say, in last 2-3 years only.
Got it. Anupama ji, do you want to wrap this up and then we'll open up to audience? So if we can have someone with a mic just walk around.
So I think for us, the problem solving has been not to just create leadership capacity in our own organizations, but also to create champions, in every level of. I find that all the gears have to start moving to create change. Working in just one area and doing work and leaving from there is not enough. We have to create champions there who take ownership and uh, then mobilize the rest of the community to do the same thing, only then it becomes scalable and sustainable. So that is something that we have discovered. And also, institutionalized funding is something that needs to change in the philanthropy landscape, because having funding for a period and for a limited set of goals is not enough to create the change and behavioral attitude change that is required uh, for the ever evolving world that we are walking into, where AI is coming so fast into education, especially. But unless it is used in a particular way, with ownership and with uh, actually at the right level, at the right situation, it is not going to be used in its full potential, and we will not see the impact that we want to see. So I think creating champions, using our resources well, and shifting philanthropy to institutionalized funding rather than end-to-end funding is very important in my view.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all of you. And we're going to open it up to the audience. Before that, I'm just going to very quickly summarize. At least for me, there were a lot of interesting takeaways in terms of levers that all of us can potentially push to make the future a lot more interesting. There were 7 levers, and I hope I'm not missing any, but I'll look at the recording and see whether I am. There was, we need to materially upgrade the quality of leadership, which could happen through investments in capacity building, initiatives like better pay parity. There was community-centric and a participatory approach to problem solving, better investments in M&E, focus on underserved areas, more investments in technology, including platforms for problem solving issues like use of accounting, etc. There was risk taking, a very interesting point that came up. And then there was changing the funding pattern. We know money makes the world go round, including creating certainty. And if I missed any, request the organizers to make sure they correct me. With that, I want to thank all of you. But before that, maybe we open it up to audience. If someone can let me know how much time we have. We have 10 minutes. So I would request the audience to not give us comments, but ask for questions. Keep it very brief, maybe like one statement question. Direct it, let me know who you want to direct it to. And if you don't want to direct to anyone, let me know, I'll direct it to someone. Okay, the lady here, if the mic could be given to her first, please.
I have the mic. Yeah.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Smriti Pahwa, and I must confess, I just attended the last 2 sessions. Despite my full commitment, I couldn't come earlier. So in last 20, I have always been a development sector professional. In last 20 years that I have seen the sector and engaged with the sector, what I have tried to do is, although I have a specialist degree, I have a doctorate in nutrition, but I worked across sectors, nutrition, health, education. Like many of the panelists said, that these are all interconnected. And I think what SDGs have done is they've kind of put some method to the madness. My question, not particularly to any panelist, and maybe it has been taken earlier, since it's new age philanthropy and transforming India, you know what I was thinking, and Anisha, you said a lot that, social sector has to evolve. What I have seen in last 20 years, that the demarcation between the doing good and the social sector and the business is becoming less and less. We are talking about the new business of doing businesses, doing good business, and with all the impact investing. So I'm really curious about this space now and engaging more. My question was, as the new age philanthropy is shaping up, are we also as philanthropists thinking of organizing ourselves? Like I was reading the impact investors, they sign 9 principles of impact investing. So, for example, if there is a project that you are funding which is focused, but then other philanthropy how do I?
I got your question, ma'am.
Are there any best
I will, yeah.
practices? Yeah.
Is there Neera Nandi in the audience? No, she's
Amit,
not here. Yeah.
May I take that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. We have a Giving Pie founder member here. So,
JC, you're going to be happy with me doing this plug-in, right? Very nice to meet you. So, I'm a founding member of the Giving Pie, which is a part of Dasra, and I know a lot of you know Neera here. And like Giving Pie, there have been other organized communities that have started to get created on philanthropy. I mean, the fact that we're all sitting here today in itself is a sign that there are forums that are exchanging best practices. But philanthropy, specifically the Giving Pie, 6 of us founded last year. And the idea was to bring philanthropists together to talk and exchange best practices around philanthropy and have conversations like this, but to be able to do it every day, every week, and every month. So forums like that do exist. And if you'd like, after the session, JC is here. And he will also know other elements that Dasra supports, as do other organizations, to help aid your journey and your understanding of all the different organizations. Because one of the biggest aspects for me personally as a philanthropist has been the power of partners and collaboration. I really, really believe, if I had 2 more minutes then to say the next point after capacity building, it would be far more collaboration in the social sector than we have today. There have to be more people supporting organizations that already exist. So there are lots of communities like that. And Amit, you must know many forums.
yeah. So I was just going to add to Tara's point. I mean, by the way, I've got many members of my team sitting here. Literally every major initiative we do is a collaborative. I don't think there's anything we do solely. But to answer your question, there are multiple vehicles now where philanthropists actually get together. We are a part of Giving Pie as well. There's also a network called Living My Promise, where I think as of last week, the 138th members signed up. This is a group where everyone has promised to give away 50% plus of their wealth during their lifetime. These are not billionaires. So it's, upper middle class or middle class and above Indians. And the reason why they take the pledge is essentially so that they become a network where they can share ideas, to the point that you talked about. So there are multiple networks like that now getting formed with the idea of basically, knowledge sharing on, making sure that exactly what's happening here, which is, all of us are on a journey, and, we can figure out how to learn from each other. That happens in an effective and efficient manner. Let's take the next question.
Yes, myself. This is Shiv.
Sorry, where are you?
Yeah, in the middle.
Ah, there you are.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
So my name is Shiv. I just thank you, Amit, for pushing each of the panelists for what would they do in the next decade. But I couldn't get the answer which I would love to listen. So I would like to take the audience to 2050. There would be a very nice commodity in your supermarket, and there will be a queue for that. Can anybody guess what is that? Oxygen. Yes. There would be oxygen, like today there's 35,000 rupees water with Nita Ambani drinking, 200 rupees water, nice one, then 20 rupees water which I am drinking, and the rural citizen who is drinking free of water. The oxygen is going to be the newest commodity. So I was surprised to see we all are culprits about it, the carbon footprint which we created today. But none of the philanthropists are even thinking about it. I saw the figures, it was 0.4% of the philanthropy going towards climate change. I would seek your support to see this as a requirement and change this thought process about it. Thank you very much.
But Nishant and then...
Yeah, so just to share with you, since that question was not asked, so we have a carbon footprint target and actions which we take, where we are reducing about 1 billion kg of CO2 from the environment in the next 5 years, and about 100 billion kgs of CO2 in the next 25 years is what one we are looking at. And 70% of our business investments post 2020 have all been into sustainability areas, where we are seeing that in terms of energy security, how with multiple different products, we are saving close to about 100 billion liters of diesel and fuel, which is coming into India. And decarbonization is one of our major focus areas. But since the discussion wasn't going on that path, but personally, I am one of the champions focusing in this area in a big way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that point up. I think very similar to what Nishant is saying is similar to what we do at Transworld. So we also focus on ESG, and E is where we have our greenhouse gas emissions, whether it's scope 1, 2, and 3. So we have it in our sustainability report. It's published. We also have a net zero carbon neutral target that is in our report. We validated it. Even one of our public companies has publicized. So it's out. Our plan is there, and that is something that's definitely in the forefront of not just me personally, but also our management in terms of how we work as a company and how we look at our asset purchases and how we see the utilization. That's definitely a core of what we do as a company. It just, since we were talking about philanthropy, it didn't come up, but 100% on point.
Yeah, I did not want to talk about our philanthropy, but this is about theirs that I'll leave for another day. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, Bindi. Yeah. This one worries me. Yeah.
I actually have two questions.
You get one, huh?
Okay, I get one. So, just very basic. I've been in the sector for 10 years and I'm hearing the same dialogue again, right? We're talking of new age philanthropy. This is going to impact my funding at some level to ask this question. But I mean, fundamentally, I'm not hearing anything different, right? I'm hearing capacity building, M&E, and I've been hearing the same dialogue for the last 10 years. The for-profit world is moving by leaps and bounds. We're talking AI, we're talking blockchain, we're talking some really radical stuff. I'm not hearing anything radical in our sector, right? We tend to, like, we're still working in the Excel world. Sorry, I'm a techie, but I'm asking this question. And I'm going to bring in the other question because we keep talking about sustainability, but we're not funding for-profit social enterprises, right? We're invariably funding non-profits, and we're not really talking of actually looking at how to get sustainability in the sector. So how are you thinking about it?
No, so I'm going to have Nishant and Anisha talk about this, right? I did push you a little bit on this because you are starting with a clean slate. Many of us, I've lost all my hair now, right? So I'm in some ways wedded to my ways. But when you look at the world, okay, and I know, Nishant talked about their approach to, business is innovation, risk-taking. I mean, they're working in EVs, etc., right? So I'd love for both of you to talk about, would your approach to philanthropy as well change the paradigm? I mean, the things that Bindi talked about.
So, just to give you a perspective, since you shared that, so about the Niti Aayog report I was reading just a few years back, and which has been consistently there. So by 2030, the target is about 13% of the national GDP to be contributing to the social impact. Today, where we are standing at about 1.4%. And then you talk about the decade and stuff, that by the end of this decade, let's say if we are getting to about 5 billion, so we are talking about 650 million, 500 billion, so you're talking about a huge number which is there, right? 5 trillion, so you're talking about 650 billion, clearly in this case. So, but how each and every one is focused, I think would be different. How we look at it is that how you make sustainability profitable and take it up in a manner where every region becomes self-sufficient. So just to take an example, like recently we were just talking about it some time back, that how in different parts of India at a rural level, the whole ecosystem never operates together, right? There is a produce which is sold, there is waste which is generated, and then it is burnt and it creates pollution and all those things happen, but people don't talk about it as an opportunity. So what we do is we educate farmers, we work with them, and we see that how that is being used as an opportunity to produce green gas, organic gas, which is used for people, organic fertilizers and other things. So there are many business opportunities which are coming out of philanthropy, making villages and people self-sufficient and regions self-sufficient with the current demographic and geographic structure they have. And that is one way, at least I look at it, how I see it, in addition to decarbonization or looking at energy security at regional level and different institutions. That's how I see that, how the professional world and professional businesses would go hand in hand with the local regions working together.
So, Anisha, I'd like you to wrap up with a very simple answer to Bindi's question. Would you invest some of the money you've set aside for your philanthropy in a for profit social enterprise, which potentially has the opportunity to solve the problem with more impact?
So very interesting question, very difficult to answer in one sentence or even 1 minute for that matter. Um, my one word answer would be it depends, because I think there are many sort of perspectives to look at it, right? So I think one, just going back to your question, is it depends on the priority. Unfortunately, for-profits are priority and not-for-profits are usually on the back burner when businesses look at it, right? So I think that's why, unfortunately, it hasn't moved as much as it could, and we're talking about the same things that we did 10 years ago. So that's a very unfortunate thing, but it is a very practical thing as well, right? So you're not talking about AI and blockchain because you have to be practical and to the point of it. But in terms of coming from the finance world, I feel like even when you look at private equity or VC, when they put investments and targets, I think there's a lot of pressure added to it, where then you're only looking at numbers, and actually coming to what you said, you lose that depth and you lose the perspective of it. So I think it depends on how it's handled. There's a very fine line personally for me. I think we all have different opinions.
Sure.
The panel today was transforming India through new age philanthropy. So the debate was not new age practices in the social sector. It was the new age sources of funding and how we look at giving. The second point I wanted to make is, for example, Antara as an example is solving aging. Right? We're 250 million people in our country over the age of 60. It is a for-profit company that is trying to solve aging. We may not get there in 200 years, but we're getting there. And there are a million examples of that. And lastly, I think when the fundamentals of the social sector are not set, and I actually think this is a conversation all of you have to have, and you have to solve for what new practices need to exist in the social sector to multiply. We are learning from you. And therefore, if the fundamentals don't exist, I don't see what AI and blockchain is really going to do. If human happiness is being questioned and oxygen is being questioned, I'm not so sure what sort of fancy stuff we want to bring in. So maybe we should do a separate day on just out of the box thinking of multiplier effect, and you can lead that, and we'd love to learn from you.
And sorry, just to add that on that as well. So what we do as CSR is actually we work with all our organizations, and at the end of the 3 to 5 years, we try to make them financially sustainable in some manner, right? So either how do they sell something, how do they tie up with an organization? So I think that's where we try to leave them a little bit stronger and a little bit more financially independent, if we may.
I know we can easily go on for another hour. And at least I feel that I took away a lot of things from hearing all of you, wonderful ladies, and the lone warrior on the panel. He did actually pretty well. He held his own. I can't say the same about me and my family, but you were pretty good. Thank you so much for being wonderful panelists, and thank you for the audience for giving us a patient hearing at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. A heartfelt thanks to all our panelists on the stage for such an insightful session before we end the day. Thank you to the audience for being with us, being connected with us for the entire dialogue, entire day. And now I would request Mr. Sharad Agarwal to felicitate our speakers on stage, our moderator and our panelists. And just 2 lines as promised with Sharad sir. He is the co-founder of ISDM and has been working with schools, helping them improve the quality of education they offer, and the taskmaster of all of us. So, Sharad sir, and we can have the bags. In no specific order, whichever bag we are seeing the tag and then giving it to the speaker. Okay, in that order. We'll have a good group photo. I would request all our panelists to come in front for the group photo. While the group photo is being clicked, I would request Trisha Verma, Director at the Global Knowledge Hub at ISDM, to give the final vote of thanks. Trisha.